friends, welcome to this module on Jstl and expression language EL part 2. Fine. This is the part 2 of our modules on Jstl and expression language. Fine. In the last module, we had seen about expression language. It was mainly about expression language. Fine. Okay. So, yes, even we had explored what all things goes in a JSP. So, I will not repeat all those things. Yes, we understand what all things can go in a JSP. Fine. We have already seen about the custom tags. So, usage of tag, a tag library. How do we use a custom tag in our tag library in our JSP? So, if I have to use tags from any tag library, how do we use it? Fine. We have already seen about that. Fine. So, how do we use a tag in a tag library? So, now here if you want to start using Jstl, there are a few things you should be having. You first download all the things related to Jstl. Okay. It includes, there are two actually standard jar files. There is a standard.jar and jstl.jar. These you will need to keep them in your lib folder. There are those TLD files. Okay. There are actually, the Jstl is mainly composed of 4 standard libraries. There are these 4 standard libraries available as part of what we call as Jstl. We have core tags, fine. Okay. It covers most of the commonly used tags. Then we have the format tags which will cover about the formatting, fine. Then we have the SQL tags which is related to database connection, fine, getting things from a database, and we have the XML tags, fine, which will be about parsing XML. Okay. So, those are the standard tag libraries, fine. What we concentrate here is, yes, mainly we will be looking at most of the things which are our custom tags, and some of the tags which are from the format tags, fine, which are related to internationalization. Fine. Format tags, again they would be related to internationalization, where you got some properties file and you would like to use those properties which you have done, where you have done that localization, fine. So, that is what we will be looking at here. Okay. So, yeah, so how do we use them? Yes, we need those TLD files also, not just those 2 jar files. We have the standard.jar, we have the jstl.jar, those should be in the lib, plus we need to keep those 4 TLD files, c.tld, we have fmt.tld, we have got x.tld, and we have got xml.tld, and we have got the sql.tld. Those are the 4 TLD files which will also be needed. Fine. So, those TLD files you can keep them in some folder within your application, fine, and then maybe under WebINF you create a folder called TLD and keep all your TLD files over there. Fine. Now, how do we use that in our JSP? So, if I am trying to use any of the JSTL, maybe I am only using the core tags, fine. So, core tags and the format tags, let us say we use only these 2 of them, fine. So, if we are using these, our JSP initially should be mentioning, okay, that yes, we have that taglib directive. So, I will say @taglib. So, this is something which will be compulsory, fine. It is not JSTL is just available like a standard tag. So, you will have to say @taglib URI equal to, maybe if you have kept it in under WebINF TLD folder, you got your TLD file. Yes, you will say URI equal to, in double quotes you will say /WebINF /UR /TLD /c.tld, and prefix equal to, we normally keep the prefix as c to indicate it is a core tag. You could have kept any other prefix, but then every place you would be following that same prefix. Now, the convention is to use c always for the prefix related to core tags. So, fine, we can use, so let us keep that same standard, fine, everyone is following that same convention. So, fine, so that is one thing, and same way you will also create one for format tag. So, you will have @taglib URI equal to /WebINF /TLD /fmt.tld, fine, and then the prefix for that could be FMT, fine. So, we will keep FMT as the standard, which is the standard convention followed, fine, we will keep that only as the prefix, fine. So, first steps for within any JSP, if you want to use JSTL, fine, in your application, yes, you should have included those jar files and the TLD files and use those the taglib directive, fine. So, having done that, then how do we use them? fine. So, let us look at each of the tags which is available, fine, each of the most of the commonly used tags which are available to us, fine. So, here let us start with the common most common tag. One of the tags, okay, it may not be used so much now, because in an earlier release of JSP, expression language was allowed to a limited extent, and you could not put them straight away. So, yes, they could go as attributes, fine, they could be going as values for the attributes. So, fine. So, one of the tags which was available for that purpose, if you wanted to give output of any of the objects or anything, fine, we have this tag called C:\out. So, we have C:\out, the syntax would require, it would require a value to be specified. One of the attribute was value. So, you can say C:\out value equal to, fine, and then you give and in the value the double quotes for the value, the value of the value attribute would be, and you can use an expression language there, dollar braces, and you put any object or whatever, fine, the value you want, fine. So, there you can use expression language, and so one of the compulsory attribute was value. We have a few optional attributes. You can say default equal to, and you can give some default value. So, in case this object which you are trying to show is empty, is not available, that object is not available, it can show the default value, fine. Or, and plus one more thing, the value which you are having, within the value, if there are those special characters like ampersand or anything, fine, or do you want to show ampersand in the output, or the ampersand has its own meaning in the HTML, fine. So, do we want to put the ampersand? So, that means we would like to put that escape sequence for showing an ampersand or showing those special characters. So, for that we have another setting which is a Boolean setting. So, we will say escape XML. So, you can say escape XML equal to, either you can mention it as true or you may mention it as false, and accordingly, yes. So, you can put this, fine. So, this is one syntax for C:\out. Another syntax for C:\out would be, you can say C:\out, do not put the value, use the other two attributes, and within C:\out and the /C:\out, you include whatever is the value to be included, fine. So, that value goes straight away, fine. So, this is something which is available, C:\out, that is our first of the JSTL, the core tags, fine. Another tag, fine, which if we are following proper MVC pattern, we may not be using it, but still it is important to know about that, fine. We have this tag called C:\set. The C:\set, set is for setting. You can use this to set the value of any of the beans, any Java bean property can be set. We can set the value in a map, fine, okay, fine, or set the value for any particular attribute. We can change the value of an attribute also, fine. So, C:\set, fine, we have this C:\set, and then we can specify value. What is the value to be set? We specify var equal to, fine, and we can specify the scope. So, this with C:\scape, if you say var equal to, in that variable in a particular scope, if you do not specify scope, the default scope would be page scope. So, in that particular scope, object would be created if it is not there, and it would be given that value, fine. If you have that object already existing, fine, on that object you can use C:\set to set the value of a property. So, for that another attribute called property may also be included. You can say property equal to this, value equal to this, property equal to this. The value and property, fine, can also be used, fine, and we have that where also, fine. This can also be used for setting the value in a map, fine. So, that is what the C:\set is, fine, like C:\set, fine. We have another one, we have C:\remove, fine, where you will only say var equal to, fine. So, particular object can be attribute may also be removed, or you can find you can remove an attribute from a particular scope. You have an option of specifying scope also, fine. So, you can specify which scope, from which scope this variable needs to be removed. So, C:\remove, that is another tag which is available in our core tags, fine. In core tags we have got core tags related to flow control also, fine. We have a tag called C:\catch. fine. We will say C colon catch, it's a it's a tag with the body. So, you can say C colon catch and then put a C colon catch. We have var equal to, optional part is var equal to. You can have a variable, fine, you give a variable name, var equal to give some variable name, okay. In double quote you give a variable name, and then we have a body, fine. The body is a full JSP, fine, some JSP segment, and we have a slash C colon catch. Now, the idea of this C colon catch is within this body of the JSP, if an exception occurs, okay. If an exception occurs, it is not going to come out, okay. It is not going to come out. Instead, it will continue processing after the C colon catch. So, C colon catch is like, okay, catch any exception if it occurs here, and you can continue after that. Fine. Another thing, the var which we have given is nothing but the var would be the variable, it would be an object which would be created, and it would in turn contain the exception object if it is getting thrown within this catch. So, we have C colon catch and slash C colon catch. Within this body of the catch, if any exception gets thrown, that object is available with that variable. Fine. That is a use of the var attribute in our C colon catch. Fine. So, that is one thing. Now, coming to the other kind of flow control which we have got C colon if, C colon if we can specify test. Fine. You can say C colon if test, and test would be a Boolean expression, fine, test this, and then we have a value, fine, C colon test. Okay. We even have a optional attribute called var, C colon test var, fine. One is you just have this without any body, or you can have C colon test, you have the var also which is optional, and you have a body and then C colon if slash C colon if. So, if you use this kind of a tag, okay, fine, the test which is there, that test will be evaluated. Whatever we have specified test equal to, you give some expression there, that expression will be evaluated. The value of the expression would be evaluated to a Boolean, it is true or false. If it happens to be a true one, fine, it would then execute, then it will be evaluating the body of the if. If that test happens to be false, it will not evaluate and fine, it will not output the value of the body. Fine, whatever is the body that should go for output. So, that would not go for output if it evaluates to false. The other thing, when we said var equal to and scope, we can also specify scope. Whatever we give as var, that var will contain the true or false value which has been evaluated. So, it is an option. If you want to keep the value in a variable, value of the test in a variable, that is where we give the var also. Fine. So, we have got this C colon if. Okay. So, that is a conditional. Another conditional one, okay. Another one which is a conditional is more like, like we have various parts like a switch case kind of a thing, okay. Okay. So, something on those lines, we have something called C colon choose. So, you can say C colon choose and slash C colon choose. Within C colon choose and slash C colon choose, fine, we can say C colon when. And here you give a, so with the entire C colon choose and slash C colon choose is broken into smaller parts. Each of those parts can be a C colon when, C colon when, C colon when, fine. Each one in the C colon when a test has been specified, okay. So, when it comes to C colon choose, fine, it will evaluate the test in each of those C colon when. For whichever test, for whichever C colon when the test evaluates to true, that part would be included in the output. Okay. So, we have C colon when and we have a test equal to, and there will be a slash C colon when before it starts with the new C colon when. Okay. Along with the C colon when, at the end of all these C colon when, you can also add a C colon otherwise, fine, and slash C colon otherwise. It is an optional one. Fine, you may have, you may not be having. So, if you got C colon otherwise, what would happen is, if it evaluates to all of those tests and if it has failed in all the earlier C colon when, the test for all the earlier C colon when, then the C colon otherwise is going to be used, and that is what is going to be picked up for output. Fine. So, that is what we have as a C colon choose. It is more like a switch case kind of thing. Fine. Pick up one of those C colon choose, or else it goes to the C colon what is in the otherwise. fine. So, that is another conditional one, fine. Another one which we have are the so these are the conditional ones, but then we also have something which are the loop, fine. You got a map, you got an array, or you got different kinds of things which are iterable, and you would like to evaluate each of those based on you want to loop over things, fine. So, you have a body for which you would like to loop. So, for that we got two different tags, fine. There is a tag called c:, for each, okay. There is one called c:, for each, fine, and another is c:, for tokens. In the c:, for each, we have attributes called items. Now, what you give as items is some object, an expression, okay, which means which is some object which could be of type array, it could be of type list, it could be of type set, it could be a collection, fine, or it could be a map also, fine. Any such thing could be used in or it could be an enumeration, any iteration, fine, anything which is iterable, fine, fine, for which there are multiple things that could be used in c:, in the items attribute. So, items attribute is for giving that, and then we have a var equal to. Now, the var here is the local variable, fine, which is within the c:, for each and the /c:, for each. This variable will contain the current value from that items. So, items is one, fine, maybe you have chosen to some map to be there. In case you are choosing a map, the var would be containing the map entry, the map dot entry. So, the key value pair that would be available in the var, fine, and so you can use var, fine. Var would be fine, var is something which you can use. Another thing probably you might be using is you may not use items, okay, or even with items, even in spite of items, there are other optional attributes here. You have an attribute called first, fine, sorry, you have an attribute called begin, you have an attribute called end, and you have an attribute called step, fine. So, this begin, end and step. Begin is for giving us out of those items, fine, we have a fine those sequence of items, out of those items which from which position should I begin, fine. It may be more applicable to an array or to a list, something which is having a which is ordered, fine. So, we can give the beginning point, fine, beginning index, we can give the end index, do not go beyond this index, and we can even give the step size. By default step would be 1, fine. So, that is another option which we have. Okay. Now, along with this there is still one more optional attribute called var status. Var status is one more, it is an object which has its own properties. It has properties like begin, end, to know that yes, this is actually the beginning row, this is the end row, fine, something like that. Oh, am I at the beginning row? Or to know the number, you can, okay, which is the current number, fine, the index number, whether it is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, what is the position. So, to know the current position. So, you have various properties in the var status. So, var status dot begin is a boolean, var status dot end is a boolean to know whether it is the beginning one or it is the end one, fine, and var status dot number. So, that would tell us number 1, 2, 3, 4 like that, or var status dot index. So, that will give us the index as 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Fine. So, that is another thing which we can have. So, another thing, this is one syntax where we use items. In the other syntax, we may not be using items. You can just straight away in the, if you are not using items, in that case begin, end would be compulsory, fine. You can optionally give a step, fine, and again we still have the var and the var status. So, var would contain the integer value. So, you can have some integer values here, fine. So, in when you say begin, end and you are not giving items, those are integer types then, fine. So, that is another option which we have for using the for each. So, for each can be used for iterations, fine, and then we have the after the for each, the next one is the for tokens. In the for tokens, fine, we can specify items. The items here can be a string, fine. Fine. See in the earlier syntax also, in the for each also, items could be a string, in which case the variable would get the character, individual characters from the string. It is again string is something, it is made up of a sequence of characters. So, that way characters would be available even with for each, but here what we have is for tokens. In case of for tokens, we give item which should be a string, fine, and then we will say delimiters, delims. So, we will say delimiters and we specify a delimiter. So, whatever is the string, it would use this delimiters to break it into smaller parts, and then we have those attribute called var equal to. So, the variable var would be used for making available that specific token. So, tokens are broken out from that item by using the delimiters and makes it available to you within the for tokens tag with the help of the variable. Fine. So, you can use this in case you have some delimited set. Very commonly maybe you have read something which is comma separated, fine. There is something, there is some object in which you have a set of lines which are comma separated values. So, when there are comma separated values and you want to find each of those values, you can use the delimiters as comma and break it into smaller parts and iterate over each and every item in that line. Fine. So, that is one kind of a thing which we can use here. Fine. So, we have the for tokens, fine. Now, we have some more core tags, fine. We got some core tags for C:, import. Now, these core tags are related to using the URLs, fine, accessing other URLs, other resources. Okay. So, one is maybe you are interested in redirecting, fine. If you are interested in redirection, fine, we know we can use those. We have that standard tag also for redirection, but then that redirection, fine, which we had available even in a servlet when we say redirection, fine, we can redirect, right. So, now here redirection would be available even within your application itself, fine. You can redirect to anything. So, you can say C:, redirect, and you have to specify URL equal to and give a URL to which you can be redirected. So, this one called C:, redirect. You have C:, import. Oh, C:, import, it is for including the text, including the content from a given URL. So, you will specify URL equal to, fine, you will specify the URL, you will specify the var. Now, if you specify a var, that var would get the value of the content. The entire content as a string can be made available to a var. Fine. So, you can use that C:, import to actually read the content from another place and make it available in a variable, fine. And maybe, or you can even include it in your content, in the current content, pick up the content of another place. Now, this is giving you full access in the sense that you can give any URL, fine. Your URL can be out of the, it need not be within your web application. It can go outside the web application, go even outside the server, fine, to any particular thing. So, that way, fine, it is much more powerful than something like a request dispatcher dot include, because request dispatcher include works only within your current application, fine, it is within the context, not outside the context. So, this one is global, fine. Okay. So, that is a C:, import. Okay. Then we have these tags which are for there is another one which is for when you have cookie, when we have session tracking to be done. Session tracking we understand normally done by using cookies. Cookies are very commonly used for session tracking, but instead of using cookies, fine, sometimes some servers may say, no, we do not use cookies, we will be following URL rewriting. Now, if there is a URL rewriting, it involves a lot of effort here, fine, to rewrite each and every place where we have a URL. So, here wherever you have a URL, okay, which is within your application, you would like to have the the session ID being included, fine. That means, you have to do your URL rewriting, fine. Now, if you have to do a URL rewriting, how do I generate that rewritten URL? And for that we have a C:, URL tag, fine. Just have to include that C:, URL, fine, specify the value, specify the URL which is your local URL, fine, and to that local URL it would automatically append the rewriting of that URL would be done for us by this particular tag. So, fine. So, this is something which we have as part of the core tags. So, these are the commonly used core tags. Okay. Other than the core tags, coming to the next category of tags, the next category is the format tags. Okay. In this format tags, here we are going to be looking only at the internationalization related tags. Fine. We will not cover all the tags here. Fine. So, internationalization related tags, recollect in internationalization what do we have? We have a locale class. Fine. So, we got a tag called C colon set locale, not C. Oh, this is not C, it is not a core tag, it is a format tag. So, one thing compulsory here would be, you will need in your JSP, if you want to use these tags, you will need to include the tag lib for FMT. Okay, FMT TLD has to be included, and for this format tag, fine, we have this tag called set locale. Fine. So, we will say FMT colon set locale. Fine. It will be FMT colon, not C colon. Now we are saying format tags always normally we prefix with FMT. So, FMT colon set locale, and then we will say value equal to. Now, value equal to here should be the value object of a locale type. You can give a string also. Fine. For example, UN underscore EN underscore US, English in US. Fine, that is an example. Or here what is also allowed is, you can use, instead of underscore, you may even use a hyphen, even that is also allowed here. So, fine, that is another way. Fine. So, of specifying a locale. So, locale also can be specified here as a text. We have another attribute, an optional attribute called variant. So, you can say variant equal to and give a variant, have a variant also added to it. Fine. So, that is another thing which you can add here. Fine. So, we have FMT tag. So, it is like this. So, in this JSP, throughout this JSP, this is my setting for locale. So, you are specifying a locale here. Fine. You are able to specify a locale. Maybe you would like to use the preference of the user's preference for the locale. Now, how do I include the how do I specify the user's preference for the locale? So, for that I will say FMT colon set locale value equal to dollar braces. Oh, where do we find the user's preference of locale? Oh, that is in the request. Fine. So, request dot get locale. So, instead of that dollar braces, fine, we will have request. How do I get the request object? It is from the page context. So, page context dot request dot locale. So, that would work for giving me the current user's preference about the locale. So, I can, that is one very good thing to set. So, you are setting whatever is the browser the client's preference for locale, that can be easily be set, but you could set it to any other value, specific value also. Fine. So, that is also possible. Okay, fine. And then we have another fine. So, this is one. So, you do this setting first, and then, oh, I am interested in using actually the I am interested in using a particular resource bundle. Fine. So, you will have FMT colon set bundle. Fine. So, set bundle is the one which would then set, fine, where we will say value equal to, and we will specify the name of a resource bundle. Fine. So, we have the base name basically, sorry, I think it is base name equal to, it is not value equal to, here we will say base name equal to. So, FMT colon set bundle base name equal to the name of a resource bundle. Fine. The base name for the resource bundle. Fine. And that can be specified. So, that way you specify your which resource bundle should be used, because already we have a setting for locale. So, for that locale, it will for that current, whatever is your current setting for the locale, it will be fetching the resource bundle. And then we have the other one called FMT colon message. Fine. So, when we say FMT colon message, we can say property equal to, and we will give the name of a property or name of one of those resource names. Fine. Which we have specified in the properties, fine, the key part, and for using that we should be able to fetch any of the properties into our property for the current which is best according to the current locale, that can be fetched for us by the by using this kind of a tag. Now, you may have some place you may have a requirement, no, I want for a particular part of the body, fine. When I say C colon set set locale, it is the locale setting for the entire thing, but for a even when I say C colon set bundle, I am setting the resource bundle for the entire JSP page from that point onwards, but then I might be interested not for the entire page, but for a small segment I want to use a particular different resource bundle, fine. So, if you want to have a maybe in a small part we would like to use a different resource bundle, fine. So, in order to use that different resource bundle, we even have a FMT colon bundle, fine. So, FMT colon bundle would be used with a body. So, we will say FMT colon bundle and slash FMT colon bundle. Within this FMT colon bundle and slash FMT colon bundle, we may be using that FMT colon message, fine, where we will where we are able to specify key equal to, fine. So, FMT colon message, and when we say key equal to, we are actually giving a key to the to a property, and we are getting the corresponding property here. Fine. Another thing, we might sometimes have that formatted message, fine, message format class of java.text package. If that is being used, we understand that can have parameters, fine. So, if you want to pass parameters to that, our FMT colon message can include a inner tag called param, fine, where we will say FMT colon param name equal to and value equal to, fine. That is something which can be used here, fine. So, that is what we have in the format tags, fine, the format tags related to internationalization, fine. So, you can use FMT colon set locale, fine, we have FMT colon set bundle, and for a smaller segment we can say FMT colon bundle and slash FMT colon bundle, within which you may be fine. And as far as FMT colon message is concerned, yes, it can be used anywhere, fine. And when we say FMT colon message, it is going to use for the current resource bundle which got selected because of the FMT colon set bundle, or it may be FMT colon bundle, either of them, fine. Which if it is FMT it is inside FMT colon bundle, that would take precedence, fine. Otherwise, whatever is the setting of FMT colon set bundle, that would be used, fine. And that way we can include things which are from a resource bundle. So, if we have a web application, we are writing a web application, we have gone for internationalization, we have done the localization job, fine, we got resource bundles for it, we should be able to use them in our JSP page quite easily, fine. So, that is what we have in this module. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.